It's all going to zero against Bitcoin.
It's going up forever.
You're against Bitcoin, you're against freedom.
Yo, welcome to another episode of Simply Bitcoin Live, your number one source for the peaceful Bitcoin revolution, current breaking news, culture, manic warfare. We will be your guide through the separation of money and state. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most watched daily Bitcoin live show on YouTube, Rumble, and X. And of course, shout out to our audio audience on the podcast platforms. Seems to be breaking records as well, so appreciate you guys. We are streaming live from the land of freedom, El Salvador. I'm at the base of a volcano right now. Absolutely beautiful. Try to give you guys a great view. I'm absolutely pumped. I have a dinner tonight with Kaiser, BTC Sessions, Meet Premier Bitcoin, and then we have the halving party, which we will be streaming live from. We'll be doing Simply Bitcoin live shows from there, so it's going to be a great time. I'm very, very excited. First impressions on El Salvador. So I'm bilingual. I speak Spanish. So I've been talking to locals like basically the entire time I've been here, and I wanted to get to know the truth, right? Like what's going on. So the general consensus is people love Nayib Bukele. People love what he's doing. People support what he's doing. People appreciate what he's doing, and that is the general consensus. That's what I've gotten. I've brought up I've tried to play devil's advocate, like this and that. People don't really, they're just like, no, you don't understand how bad things were and how mass of an improvement this has been. And from someone who has lived in various places in Latin America, whether it's the Dominican Republic, Colombia, Ecuador, Panama, I spent a little bit of time in Dominican Republic. When I was younger, I spent time in Venezuela. What I could tell you here is that there's hope. There's a good energy. There's good vibes. And I really feel it. I really feel it. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because I'm a Bitcoiner, but I feel it. So that's on the Nayib Bukele side. I'm really hopeful about the future of El Salvador. I really like this place is going to be awesome in the next 5-10 years. Okay. That being said, on the Bitcoin side of things, it's a little bit of a different story. I tried to pay the moment I got in and there's an immigration kind of entry fee. I said, hey, can I pay in Bitcoin? Because I've heard that before. I heard that was the thing. And I didn't have any Bitcoin on chain on my phone. So so the lady, the immigration agent even asked me, she's like, Bitcoin or Lightning? And I'm like, Lightning. I literally took out my Zeus wallet, which is connected to my Get Albi account. I literally paid in Lightning, took 30 seconds, like literally less than 30 seconds, like immediately, lightning fast, literally. And if for anyone doesn't believe me, check out my Twitter, don't trust, verify. I have the receipt right there. That was really cool. Now, when I left the airport, I started talking to kind of different people, and a lot of people approached me and they asked me for, do you need a taxi and do you need a ride? I said, sure. How much are you going to charge me? I'm like trying to find like who's going to charge me the least. I said, do you accept Bitcoin? Right. No, people said no. I had a Chivo wallet. I don't really use it anymore. That's basically the general consensus of it. And then I got into an Uber, which happened to be the best deal to go to San Salvador, their capital. It's about a 45-minute drive from the airport to San Salvador, where I'm staying currently. And I was talking to him. I was like, do you use Bitcoin? And his answer was really interesting. He's like, in the beginning, like not really, like a lot of people haven't really used it. But since the price has gone up, I've used it to save, which I found is interesting. It's like we don't really use it for like transactional aspects, like people didn't quite understand. But as the price has gone up, as number go up technology does its thing, it seems to have garnered more interest, which I thought was really fascinating. And that's something that I've seen, being a Bitcoin educator for 8 years now, the number one convincer, doesn't matter how much education, doesn't matter how much you teach people about sound money and all the things that we always say, like the number one convincer is NGU technology. And it seems like even in El Salvador, NGU technology is doing its thing. We got it's Scott Hawkins in the chat. Nice. You wanted the volcano in the background and you did it. Got to celebrate the little wins. I told you I was going to do it, man. So that's the deal with El Salvador. No, but today's episode, kind of wanted to give you guys the breakdown in the beginning because I promised you guys. But today's episode, we're going to focus mostly on Argentina. What is going on in Argentina? It seems like Javier Milei bent the knee, unfortunately. There's a tweet by Max Kaiser in the morning. He says, tragic betrayal by Javier to his people. And what am I referring to? An article on Forbes by our boy Javier Bastardo. I'm going to see him a couple days at the halving party, who's been covering Bitcoin in the global South. And the name of the headline of the article is Argentina Unveiled Mandatory Registry for Bitcoin and Crypto Platforms. Right? I dug a little bit deeper into where this came from, and it came from the Financial Action Task Force. This is something that we've covered a lot on Simply Bitcoin, especially in the early days. We haven't covered it in quite a while. And we're going to do like a deep dive on who they are. They're an unelected bureaucracy that essentially gets to dictate what the financial regulations are for the world. But like you guys know, if you've been watching Simply Bitcoin for a while, first of all, governments play by a different set of rules. Politicians play by a different set of rules. And then they expect their citizens, their constituents, their slaves, that's a strong word, to follow a different set of rules, right? So I find that interesting. What is the FATFA? Is the FATFA actually, being useful? Is it succeeding in its goal, which is, to limit money laundering, to limit terrorist financing? Is it one of those cases of the road to hell is paved in good intentions? Is it good intentions that have run amok? Anyways, I'll break it down for you guys. I'll make the case, and I'll let you guys decide. And then in other news, of course, Natalie Burnell doing what Natalie Burnell does best. She's going on the Legacy Financial Media, and she is dropping the sauce. I'm going to play you guys one of her latest clips from Fox Business. Natalie always coming in with the fire. And we have a very, very special guest today. One of my favorite Bitcoin artists. I've spent so much Bitcoin on his art. And of course, I'm talking about Madex. And I think you do the design. You're the design person for Bull Bitcoin, if I'm not mistaken, as well, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
How you doing, Madex? Thank you for coming on the show, man. Happy to have you. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you very much. Happy to be here and share what I'm up to and some perspectives on things and talk about Bull a bit. And yeah, you got one. The volcano looks great in the background there.
Right, you got one of your epic paintings in the back. And is that like a new piece? Is that something that you've been working on for a while?
No, this one is very old. This is from 2018. So it was completed between 2016 and 2018. And I'm not at the studio right now. I'm going in right after this. And I don't have much of my own art in my personal home. This is the only one I have.
Interesting.
So I set up here beside it. And yeah, I try to keep other Bitcoin artists' art in my house. So that's most of what I got on the walls here. It's like my private collection. And then at the studio, it's entirely, everything is Madex. There's nothing not Madex at the studio. Cool. Just so when people come to visit, they don't get confused and they're like, oh, I want to buy this one. And I'm like, well, that's actually, a $10,000 crypto graffiti piece, but there's some Madex over here, so there's nothing else, nothing but Madex at the studio. And then at home I keep, but this is an old one that my girlfriend really likes. So we keep it here.
Well, happy to have you on the show, man. And, it's like I said, like if we want to win this war, it's about winning over the hearts and minds. And the taking over the culture is a very important part of it. And art plays such an essential role in culture. that, the more Bitcoin artists, the more Bitcoin content, the more Bitcoin music artists, the better, right? That's how you really, spread the Bitcoin ethos. It's not just about content. It's just not about a number go up. It's about fundamentally changing the way that, the way that people see money, the way that the way that people see the state, the role of the state in their lives. I actually have a sticker on my mic stand. It says "Come and take it," and it's one of your Madex stickers. I'm pretty sure you made it into a piece as well. And a lot of your pieces are like that. They're a little bit cryptic in a way, but they still signify, right, the separation of money and state, the Bitcoin ethos. It's all in there, right? So I'm very excited to have Madex on the show today. And of course, my legendary co-host, who is always optimistic. He's going to be joining me in El Salvador, I think tomorrow, Opti. And Sophie's
I'm going to miss tomorrow's show, so.
Sophie's going to be in the co-host seat tomorrow, so that should be good. I know a lot of everyone was asking where's Sophie, so Sophie's going to be joining me tomorrow. How you doing, Opti?
I'm doing wonderful, man. Like I say all the time, it's hard to not be happy when you live on the Bitcoin standard and the fiat clown world's crumbling around you. And you're just like, hey, man, life's great. I just get to come out here and create and saving the hardest money ever known. But before we get into that, I do want to touch on an aspect that you just talked about, people in El Salvador, is kind of the idea of like bimetallism here. You can see that, it's not like someone's telling these people in El Salvador or the people of El Salvador that they should save Bitcoin and spend their dirty fiat, but it's playing out in real time where they understand, oh, wow, number go up is great. I save in Bitcoin and I use the dirty local currencies to buy the things that I need. And so I think this is a great first step for the adoption of Bitcoin. And what do you always say? El Salvador is the beachhead for Bitcoin. And now you're down the beachfront. Yeah. And now you're down there and you can experience it. I was down there 2 years ago, so I can't wait to get down there tomorrow and hang out with all the boys down there.
Yeah, 100%. So, and especially today on today's like theme and just what we're going to talk about today, how El Salvador has taken a specific path. Seems like Argentina, even though it's a libertarian candidate, right, seems to be taking another path, which I find interesting. So anyways, it's going to be a great show. If you guys are enjoying this content so far, make sure to smash that like button. Really, really helps with the algos. Help us break 100 likes within the first hour on YouTube. And if, again, you're watching us on Rumble, smash the little, it's a grayed out thumbs up. You could smash it, turns green. And on Twitter, it seems like Twitter live streams have been picking up. You can smash that button as well. So guys, I'm extremely hyped about today's show. It's going to be a great show. No more delay. Let's jump straight into it. But before we do that, I definitely want to give a very, very special shout out to our flagship sponsor. And of course, and I'm not using the right video screen for that. We got to use this one.
Vacation mode, Nico.
Do it. We got to do it live. Man. Here we go. Wah! All right. Anyways, I want to give a shout out to our flagship sponsor. And of course, I am talking about the Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. That's right. You can't buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well unless you're going to take self-custody, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state, right? Self-custody is the revolution. Bitcoin Well's on a mission to make self-custody the standard, the default. So go check out bitcoinwell.com today. They recently expanded to all 50 US states. I also want to give a shout out to the Bitcoin Well Bitcoin Jackpot Contest. Currently, the current jackpot is sitting at 4.1 million Satoshis. We want that jackpot to reach 10 million Satoshis by the halving. The way that it goes up, more sats are contributed to the jackpot every single time you enter the contest. The way that you do that is by signing up to Bitcoin Well, stacking sats, and that jackpot continues to grow. If you're an existing user of Bitcoin Well, go to the rewards section and again, use those points that you earned, stacking sats, and put it into the jackpot. They've also been giving away prizes, like a book by Seb Bunny. We've given away a Passport hardware wallet, and some seed plates as well. We're going to be giving away more giveaways in the next coming weeks. So guys, stay tuned. Check out bitcoinwell.com. Best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. All right, everybody, let's get to the numbers. Let's do this.
The Bitcoin numbers.
Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Is your seed phrase really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of just writing them on paper. Don't store your generational wealth on paper. Paper is prone to water damage, fire damage. You want to put your generational wealth on one of the strongest metals on planet Earth, titanium. Your words are actually stamped into this metal plate with this hammer and these letter stamps. And once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamped seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They're also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin with peace of mind for the long haul. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed. All right, guys, you want to make it over the finish line with your generational wealth. And the way that you do that is by properly securing your Bitcoin seed words. And the way that you do that is by not storing them on paper, store them on titanium, stamp them on titanium. Go check out Stamp Seed, promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the website. At the time of recording, seems like Bitcoin's had a little bit of a dip, which gives you an opportunity to stack those sats cheaply. $65,470 per coin, sats per dollar 1,527. Block height 837,414. Blocks to halving 2,586. Halving estimate April 20th, 2024. Total Lightning Network capacity 4,397 Bitcoin. Capacity value $287 million US dollars. Realized monetary inflation 1.73%. The market capitalization of Bitcoin 1.29 trillion US dollars. Bitcoin versus gold market cap 9.32%.
Hey Nico, before you go on, we got a super chat already.
Oh, we got a super chat.
Well, shouts out to you for the $5. It said, sorry, been missing out. Been in your neck of the woods, though, Nico. Enjoy El Salvador.
Appreciate the super chat, Will. Appreciate it, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for supporting the show. In case anyone doesn't know, by popular request, we have the super chats enabled on YouTube. But you could also donate to us as on Lightning, on chain, whatever floats your boat. But
I'll get the Lightning super chats going as soon as possible.
Ooh, I know we could do that, but I think
there's
down.
a way. I can't figure out the technicals. But anyways, keep going.
Anyways, okay, so here is Natalie Brunell on Legacy Media, once again shifting the Overton window, continuing to shift it. Here is Michael Saylor saying Bitcoin unchains capital from the prison of politics. Even the Chad Saylor himself is saying separate money from state. Anyways, let's hear what Natalie has to say. It's about a 4-minute video. I don't know if we'll have enough time to play the entire thing, but let's check it out. Here we go.
Let's bring in Natalie Brunell, host of the Coin Stories podcast. Natalie, thanks so much for being with us today. Always good to see you.
It's great to see you, Callie. Thanks so much.
Okay, so right off the bat, I got to get your reaction to the SBF sentencing. I've heard all sorts of, it was too much, it was too little. What do you think, 25 years?
Look, I'm just glad the whole trial is behind us. I hope FTX customers get as much money back as possible. And honestly, I just hope people learn the very important lesson that Bitcoin and crypto are very different. And I can't help but think that if SBF just had laser eyes and focused on Bitcoin and avoided all the leverage and counterfeiting money through altcoins, then he'd be enjoying a new all-time high instead of looking forward to prison in his 50s.
Yeah, he would be enjoying an all-time high. And actually, that was one of the reasons why the judge said, yeah, there's harm here because customers are getting paid back, but they're getting paid back at November 2022 levels. And Bitcoin, of course, 4x what it was back then. And so to that point, do we feel like the crypto winter is behind us? I think a lot of folks are wondering, okay, we're seeing the price run up. Is that because of the Bitcoin ETF, or is it because those folks who didn't want to miss out are jumping back in, they're getting more comfortable?
Yeah, it's been such a blessing to be able to stack at the lower prices because we are back at these high levels. And this is the first time we've seen a new all-time high before a Bitcoin halving in a cycle. So things could get very interesting, especially because in previous cycles, we would hit a new all-time high about 6 to 12 months after a halving. And with the consistently strong demand for those spot Bitcoin ETFs you mentioned that are wildly popular, I don't see how we don't hit six figures sometime soon, unless we have some massive economic contraction on the macro side. But if we do, guess what they'll have to do? They're going to have to print. And every time they print, they're just the perfect marketing team for why we need Bitcoin.
Well, so we're coming up on election year, and like you said, we could maybe see a six-figure number in the near future, especially with that halving coming. But lots of focus from Washington on regulating the space, on regulating crypto, looking at things like FTX, even though that was really more average variety fraud. What do you think another 4 years of Biden or Trump looks like for Bitcoin, for crypto?
Well, here's the thing. There is regulatory clarity around Bitcoin. There is only regulatory uncertainty around the rest of crypto. And I think a lot of people are disappointed by politicians in general on both sides who overpromise and underdeliver, all the while enriching themselves to the point of generational wealth while they opine how sad it is that we no longer have a middle class. And one of the best things about Bitcoin is it is inherently apolitical. It removes the power that comes with being able to manipulate money and print limitless units. And it really unchains capital from the prison of politics. So no matter who gets elected, I think Bitcoin is going to shine.
Well, certainly that's something that we're going to be curious to see about the candidates as they come out. Before I let you go, I wanted to bring up Ethereum status. So Larry Fink.
All right, I'm going to stop it there in terms of the Ethereum conversation. Okay, so a lot to unpack there about essentially Bitcoin money being basically unbroken from politics, being unchained from politics, right? Apolitical money. Yes, that's the point, right? That's, and the fact that Natalie's doing that on legacy media is a big deal because the consumers or the viewers of legacy media aren't the same viewers of Simply Bitcoin who are already hardcore Bitcoiners that, already they already know, they're already awakened to the truth, right? But you start incepting these seeds into the minds of viewers, and then you have BlackRock, and then you have Michael Saylor on the public company level, then you have Nayib Bukele on the nation state level, and the common theme among all these, all these people and all these institutions and companies and governments is that the moment they adopt Bitcoin, number go up, life gets better, right? And why is life getting better? Well, it's because the money is apolitical. The money is neutral. There is no bureaucratic elite that get to create money for free that everyone else has to work for. And she's shining the light on the current system. It doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or Republican that gets in power. It doesn't matter. Both political parties are going to do the exact same thing. They're going to print money. And when they print money, if you're in the lower and middle classes, which a lot, like Natalie said, what a lot of these politicians say they want to protect those people, right? They get hurt the most, right? We've shown you guys on many episodes. We did an episode on how Bitcoin not only brings back the American dream, but actually exports the American dream worldwide. If you've been saving on a Bitcoin standard, the prices of real estate haven't doubled in the last 5 years. In fact, real estate has gotten like 80 to 90% cheaper, right? Imagine if the whole entire world was on a Bitcoin standard. I think the world would be a much more peaceful place. I think the world would be a much more optimistic place. And I think a lot of the divisions that people have now would at least diminish. They would maybe they wouldn't go away completely, but they would go away a lot because all of a sudden people have the ability to put food on the table for their families, right? So that's the message that we got to keep hammering home. Politicians aren't going to save America. Politicians aren't going to save the world. Bitcoin is going to save the world. And the way that we do that is by separating money from state. Bitcoin truly does fix this, fix the money, fix the world. Anyways, Matex, you've been in the space for quite a while, man. A lot of your art, I know that you have this very I think I purchased one, but it basically has like an end the Fed aspect of it. So a lot of these, a lot of these themes, a lot of these topics that are now crossing the Rubicon. Now they're being talked about on legacy media. I don't want to call it the mainstream media because it's not. We're the mainstream media now. Independent content creators are the mainstream media now. But, you know, the legacy media, right, where a lot of, you know, the older generation is still watching that for whatever reason. You know, they're getting exposed to these radical ideas, you would say, and then the Overton window shifts. You know, the idea of an apolitical money that can exist, the idea of a deflationary money that can exist, right? So I wanted to get your take on that as a Bitcoin artist.
Well, I mean, the legacy signal, in my opinion, has very little effect on anything. I don't think anybody, regardless of their age, who has competence is sitting around watching Fox News. I think the only people there are people who are anchored to the fiat system already. And no matter how well Bitcoin performs, they'll never leave the fiat system until, you know, I think even with nothing left in bankruptcy, I don't think they'll make the swap. What a major piece I noticed that keeps a lot of legacy capital from entering the Bitcoin space is that once you get to a certain net worth, there's an entire architecture of investment products that produce returns varying depending on the risk that you're willing to take on. So low risk, you'll get a return of 10%, a little bit higher risk, 15%, a little bit higher risk, 20%, very high risk, 30%. And this is constant returns on whatever you have locked up in fiat. And Bitcoin doesn't offer, unless you get into the Ponzi scam world, we've seen how that turns out, but doesn't have these kind of compounding interest products. And that is a barrier for them to really understand what going up 190% in a 72-hour period feels like. As soon as, and obviously Bitcoin can go down, the volatility is a block, but and then when those giant pumps happen, I think they just kind of, it's constantly like we've been hearing it over and over and over again as long as I've been around Bitcoin. And anyone who's OG, constantly it's, I missed it. At $1, I missed it. At $10, I missed it. 100,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. And I think it's really, really difficult to break out of those patterns. I mean, Francis and I have been discussing it for a very long time that the only thing that's really going to move the needle for anybody in legacy finance is starvation.
I mean, what were you saying, Nico? Now we have a metric. 150% inflation is when people start embracing Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, that's like we basically have a political strategy now. Like now we know how to get a libertarian candidate elected. All we need is 150% inflation, right?
Even if he's LARPing a little bit.
Yeah, no, and we're gonna talk. We're gonna dive deep into that LARP today, man.
I know.
But yeah, like so. Yeah, I think things have to break. But I also believe in market forces, right? Like, look, if Saylor keeps doing his thing, keeps performing, if anyone who's buying the ETF keeps, performing, they're benefiting from number go up. You can only take an ideological stance for so long. Like that Vanguard CEO, I don't think it's a coincidence that he said he was going to resign as CEO a month after he said that Vanguard wasn't going to, bring a Bitcoin ETF, right? So you can take this ideological stance as much as you want, but I think number go up technology does what number go up technology does best. And I think market forces are going to take care of the rest. Opti, what's your take before we get on to the news?
Yeah, first and foremost, like to Madix's point, I just coined the new phrase for the Nico calls it legacy media. I usually call it corporate press, but I think at this point we can just safely call it boomer news because only the boomers are watching the news sources.
There's some badass Bitcoin boomers, man.
I know. I always get yelled out because they're like, you always talk shit on boomers. It's like, no, guys, it's just a meme. It's all in good fun. But anyways, on that note, the boomer news is finally slowly learning. You can tell that they're learning in real time. They obviously haven't really done the deep dive. The corporate press, they're not incentivized to deep dive Bitcoin. They're incentivized to shield the dollar. But there was a point in that little clip that wasn't necessarily just Bitcoin focused that I do want to touch on. And it's the idea that finally the corporate press is getting to the point where they're calling SBF and FTX just outright fraud instead of calling them their Wonder Boy and like, oh, he made a mistake. It's like now they're like, yeah, we can call him a fraud considering he got sentenced, he's guilty and all that stuff. So you love to see that. I mean, obviously, Nico's going to call me a statist and Madix is going to call me a statist for encouraging state violence on individuals. But hey, he's outright frauding people again. You know, at least they're getting to the point where they're calling a spade a spade. So love to see that. It goes to the idea that the signal's finally spreading and people are waking up to the fact that shitcoiners are scammers, guys. Like they're literally frauding you out of your Bitcoin. If it is not Bitcoin, it's a shitcoin. And then again, on that point, you know, again, legacy media or corporate press, they always conflate Bitcoin and crypto. And I'm glad that at least Nat Brunel goes out there and basically says like, it's Bitcoin, not crypto. This is why the show is called Simply Bitcoin in the first place, is to eliminate all the noise out there. I know new people come into the space. It's very hard to wrap your head around what everything is going on into Bitcoin, especially when there's like 35,000 coins now or 3,500 coins. There's so many shit coins out there now, but there is one that leads the pack. There is one true coin out there, and it is Bitcoin. And then on the last point, like Nico was saying, this is the whole point of Bitcoin. This is the whole point that Bitcoiners talk about, is the separation of money from state. And again, to Madix's point, I can't even put a number on the amount of conversations that I've had with people on the internet or in real life where they always have the flawed idea that only a government can issue money. And you're just like, guys, like, come on, man. I know it's been the last 100 years that's the status quo and that's the norm that you're used to. But this is the point of Bitcoin, is to have a money that isn't controlled by any single entity. It's a money that everyone can opt into. And that's what's going on here. And so, you know, maybe part of the Bitcoin price rise is the ETF. Maybe it's kind of front running the halving. But also, it's really back to an idea I always say, that the Bitcoin price is a real-time metrics of people's understanding of what is going on. And so I think this just goes to show that more people are waking up to the power of Bitcoin, to having a money that isn't controlled by a cabal of bankers or a certain nation state. And this is why Bitcoin is going to take over. It is apolitical money that can't be controlled, that anyone can opt into. And hey, if you fight it, you know, go ask China how that's going to happen. They banned it like 27 million times at this point, and we're still running. Bitcoin's running. Life is great. Living on a Bitcoin standard is the way.
Yeah. Well, amen. Bart, give yourself some air horns to that optic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're almost at, we are at 1,000 live viewers between Rumble, YouTube, and X. So if you guys, we just broke 1,000 on YouTube and X combined, and we got about 70 on Rumble. So if you guys are enjoying the show, make sure to smash that like button. It tells the algos to push the orange signal forward. It tells the algos to push Simply Bitcoin forward. All right, guys, let's dive deep into the news segment. We have a lot to uncover. I spent quite a bit of time focusing on this specific subject this morning. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get to the news. Here we go.
The Daily News.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation Devices. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US. It's fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a simple feature phone. So you will know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes. Experience the peace of mind that comes with taking ownership of your own keys. After a massive sellout during Bitcoin Miami 2023, the Passport is back in stock at foundationdevices.com. Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, completely air-gapped security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. If you're thinking about getting your Bitcoin off exchanges, this is the one for you. Check out the Passport link in the show notes below to learn more. All right, everybody. I made it incredibly easy for you guys scan the QR code on your screen. It'll take you directly to the Foundation Devices website where you can get yourself a Passport hardware wallet. Remember, guys, not your keys, not your cheese. Recommend the Passport, completely open source. And if you pair it up with the Envoy app, it's incredibly easy to use. All right. Okay, guys. So let's talk about today's theme of the episode, talk of the episode. So I gotta say, I mean, look, I'm going to let Max do the talking for me. Tragic betrayal by Javier to his people. And of course, he's talking about Javier Milei, the recently elected libertarian president. Here's the Forbes headline: Argentina unveiled mandatory registry for Bitcoin and crypto platforms. That is already having a detrimental effect. This was posted by a fellow Bitcoiner. Important notice, send globally Argentina. Hi, we're reaching out to inform you that as of Friday, March 29, 2024, we will no longer support send globally transactions between the US and Argentina. This is due to our payments partner in Argentina winding down operations. Now, make no mistake, you know, there's consequences to this, but where is this coming from? Like, where is this coming from? And it's coming from a specific organization called the Financial Action Task Force. But before I get to that, let's read through some of this article. It goes on to say, with the anarcho-capitalist and libertarian leader LARP Javier Milei taking power in Argentina in December 2023, many felt that his plans to rebuild the national economy and dollarize it would help Bitcoin and cryptocurrency adoption in the country. But after a few months of his government, more regulation is coming. In late March, the Commission Nacional de Valores in Argentina announced a new mandatory registry of virtual asset service providers for those operating with crypto assets in the country. Companies and individuals doing that activity now will be asked to comply with the registration approved on March 14th by the Argentine Senate as part of the amendments to the current regulatory framework to address the Financial Action Task Force recommendations. We're going to double back to that. The new requirement will affect businesses dedicated to providing several services such as buying, selling, sending, receiving, lending, and trading cryptos. Every provider should complete the registration, and the regulation is not just for the locally based companies, but also for those operating in the market but based elsewhere. This is how you could see that it affected the strike announcement. Those who are not registered will not be able to operate in the country. After the announcement, the securities watchdog participated in a meeting with the country's main legal firms and the fintech chamber on the implementation of the registry, with some representatives of local companies participating. Quote, it's a terrible idea to have a registry that enables the buying and selling of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is money, not a security. It's as wrong as if currency exchange houses for dollars or euros or shops where gold is bought and sold had to register with the CNV. It's complete nonsense. Goes on to say, this benefits no one except maybe some state bureaucrats and an army of lawyers and useless people from the compliance industry. I want you guys to focus on that last part. An army of lawyers in the compliance industry, okay? And the bureaucrats. Okay, so here they said that they are doing this to comply with the Financial Action Task Force. What is the Financial Action Task Force? It's an intergovernmental organization founded in 1989 on the initiative of the G7 to develop policies to combat money laundering and to maintain certain interests. In 2001, its mandate was expanded to include terrorist financing. You're like, oh, Nico, that doesn't sound very bad. Okay, but this is an unelected bureaucracy. There is no oversight over this. Who regulates the regulators, right? Anyways, so this is the Financial Action Task Force president. He's a senior official appointed by the Financial Action Task Force plenary from among its members. But who elects the members? They're appointed. They're not elected, right? We always hear about democracy. That's one of the things that we always hear about as Bitcoiners. That's like the legacy corporate media, democracy this, democracy that. This ain't democratic. This is literally appointed officials, and they're getting to dictate all these rules that affect people's ability to interact with the global economy. And I'll get to that in a second. I found this research paper it was released in December of 2023. the dark side of anti-money laundering, mitigating the unintended consequences of the Financial Action Task Force standards. Okay, so that being said, this paper, it provides a little bit of cover for the Financial Action Task Force, but at the same time, it reveals a lot of the, quote, unintended consequences, right? And what's that famous quote? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. It reveals a lot of the unintended consequences of this of the so-called compliance. Is the compliance really benefiting the compliance industry, the lawyers? Maybe perhaps it's also benefiting politicians a little bit, because you have more people that are controlled by rules. Maybe you can make that argument. Anyways, it goes on to say, I highlighted some of the parts that I found interesting. The unintended consequences of the Financial Action Task Force standards. First, de-risking. So what is de-risking? De-risking refers to the situation where financial institutions choose to restrict or terminate their business relationships with specific clients or categories of clients, opting to avoid risks altogether rather than managing them. Several interconnected factors contribute to these decisions, including risk perception, profitability, compliance costs, the risk of sanctions, reputational risk, and a lack of proper understanding of AML requirements. The relative importance of these factors varies on a case-by-case basis. However, concerns about profitability play a primary role in driving de-risking. High compliance costs. Did you hear what the Forbes article said about the compliance aspect of it? If you make a lot of these institutions have to go through all this compliance, all of a sudden, why would they go through all the hurdles of signing, of accepting someone from Iran to create a bank account if, and Iran necessarily isn't a country of high income? Why would they accept them if, it's going to come with more risk, and with more risk comes more compliance cost? This is what they mean by de-risking. So it kind of creates a situation where, and it's an unintended consequence where, depending on where you're born, you're entitled to have a bank account or you're not entitled to have a bank account. And of course, if you're the financial institutions, you're like, look, it's only worthwhile for me to allow certain transactions from certain countries because they're less risky. There's less reputational risk. So that's one of the unintended consequences. The second one, exploring the link between the FATF standards and financial exclusion, right? Keyword there. Nonetheless, the FATF itself has acknowledged that financial inclusion can be exacerbated when the RBA is not correctly applied, especially if the FATF standards are not utilized in a proportionate manner based on existing risks. The FATF standards primarily focus on higher risk situations while also providing optional simplified measures for low risk situations. For example, promoting financial inclusion could involve the application of a simplified customer due diligence for lower risk financial products, such as an account with a limited range of services. This approach would allow individuals with limited resources and financial literacy to access basic banking services without being burdened by excessive compliance requirements. So they're trying to tell you okay, yes, because of the compliance, because it might not make sense for us to, it might not be profitable for us to provide, certain financial services to certain countries because those countries are, low income countries. But in low income countries, they tend to be higher risk in terms of the AML and KYC stuff. So they're admitting here, basically, look, this might financially exclude people. You know what my answer is to that? This is what Bitcoin fixes. Anyone, it doesn't matter where you are, you can literally download a wallet and then all of a sudden you have the ability to interact with the global financial system. And they're trying to go through all these bureaucratic loopholes. I'm like, we can fix it with this situation and we can do this and we can do a better job. There's already a solution to it. And that solution is Bitcoin, right? And here's the last part. which is the charities, the non-for-profit organizations. They play a pivotal role within our society by providing vital support and charitable services to communities and marginalized groups, even in challenging regions. And amidst periods of conflict and critical emergencies in the aftermath of the 2001 terrorist attacks in the United States and the subsequent declaration of the war on terrorism, the war on terror, the FATFA broadened its mission to encompass the combat against terrorist financing. Within this framework, FATFA recognized the potential risks associated with non-for-profit organizations being exploited by money launderers. Terrorist groups, through tactics like masquerading as charitable entities, utilizing NPOs as conduits for terrorist financing, or redirecting funds originally intended for legitimate purposes towards supporting terrorist activities. So it's telling you this whole thing about, like, you know, this AML, KYC type of requirements might affect non-for-profit organizations. You guys know one very, very well. But before we get to it, let's lay out the three important points. Who regulates the regulators, right? So who regulates the FATFA, right? Again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I have no doubt that they have good intentions for what they're trying to do here. And the most important question is all of this compliance working? So let's address the first point about the non-for-profits. Do you guys remember WikiLeaks? WikiLeaks says funding has been blocked after government blacklisting. What did WikiLeaks do for it to get blacklisted? What did WikiLeaks do in terms of, money laundering, in terms of terrorism? WikiLeaks released a video of an Apache gunship mowing down journalists in Iraq that were thought to be armed insurgents, but they turned out not to be. It was like 20, 30 people. WikiLeaks leaked that. They put Julian Assange in prison. He's still in prison. And they cut off WikiLeaks' ability to get funded through the traditional financial system. You know what they could still get funded by? Bitcoin. So FATFA is telling you, oh no, this is only going to apply to money launderers and terrorists. But in reality, there's been some collateral damage, which I find interesting. Now, here's a clip of Julian Assange referring to some of the wars. And it's very interesting because the US has had a history of endless wars, right? And a lot of the politicians in the imperial city, Washington, D.C., are cheerleaders of these endless wars, right? So let's check out what Julian Assange has to say here. And I find it interesting.
Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.
So what's really interesting about this is that he's talking about Afghanistan. As soon as they ended the war in Afghanistan, what happened? The war in Ukraine started, right? It's very interesting. By the way, this man is still in prison. Speaking of Afghanistan, and speaking about financial exclusion, right? Here is an article by Business Insider. Impoverished Afghan women are receiving emergency aid in crypto as the Taliban limits cash withdrawals and millions go hungry. If you were to follow the Financial Action Task Force regulations, Afghanistan would be deemed too risky. You wouldn't be able to do it. So what about all these, Afghani women? What would they do? That's where Bitcoin comes in, right? And then going back to the last question that I have, is all of this compliance working? Because I think that's a really, really, important question to ask. We actually had this guy, this gentleman on the show. So this is at the bottom of the Wikipedia page for the FATFA. And it says, in a 2020 paper, Ronald Paul states that while the FATFA has been very successful in getting its policies adopted worldwide, the actual impact of those policies is rather small. According to polls estimates, less than 1% of illegal profits are seized, with the cost of implementing the policies being at least 100 times larger. That's the key part there. With the cost of implementing the policies being at least 100 times larger. So it doesn't work. It doesn't work, right? It's not effective, but the cost is that much higher. And then it reminds me of the Forbes article. This benefits no one except maybe some state bureaucrats and an army of lawyers and useless people from the compliance industry. So it seems like the compliance industry is benefiting a ton. It's not really effective, right? There's some gray lines being crossed, right? Because it's like, okay, this is only for terrorists and money launderers. But then, you know, people like Julian Assange get caught in the crosshairs. So I find that very interesting as well. And here's another aspect, right? Which is the traditional financial system already follows the regulations by the Financial Action Task Force, right? And one of the things that Elizabeth Warren and co. did is that they used the Wall Street Journal to try to convince the American public that Bitcoin and crypto, right, are being used to finance terrorism. That was quickly rebuked. And don't take my word for it. Here is Tom Emmer, the GOP majority whip, interviewing the head of the FinCEN, and hear the words from him. Don't trust, verify. Let's check it out.
On October 10th, 2023, the Wall Street Journal reported that between August 2021 and June 2023, Hamas received 41 million in digital assets, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad received 93 million in digital assets. Under Secretary Nelson, is this Treasury's assessment too? Because the world's leading blockchain analytics firms have called this a misinterpretation of the data, and that the amount that any terrorist might have received is significantly smaller.
Thank you for that question, Congressman. And yes, I think that assessment largely tracks with our own. The numbers noted in the Wall Street Journal piece talked about wallets, but not necessarily the sort of disaggregated among the wallets customers.
It's assets that people had in their wallets, as opposed to what was specifically going to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas.
That's what we think is most likely. And we also assess that terrorists still prefer, frankly, to use traditional products and services. But this is something.
Okay. So you just had the head of the FinCEN saying that terrorists prefer to use the traditional financial system, even though the regulations from the FATFA are still in place, even though we know that the effectiveness of those regulations are not worth it. I mean, are not working. So why did Argentina follow? You know, was it pressure? Is this effective? You know, what I'm seeing here, right? And this is the part that they tried to justify in that like very academic paper and saying like, oh, you know, there's ways around this. You know, there's solutions that we can come up with. The solution is simple. It's Bitcoin. You download a Bitcoin wallet, doesn't matter where you are around the world, and all of a sudden you have unconfiscatable wealth. You have the ability to transact with anyone around the world globally. Like their solution is right there, right? It's not a bureaucratic solution. It's clearly not working. The numbers are there. The numbers don't lie. It's clearly affecting people that need this the most, right? Which are the lower income countries. And you heard it from the man himself. The terrorists prefer using the legacy financial system more, even though they have the regulations already implemented more than they prefer using Bitcoin and shitcoins. I mean, what else do you need to know, right? So shame on Argentina for like kind of conceding here and just like, you know, flopping over. why is this unelected bureaucracy getting to dictate the rules of money for the rest of the world? Right? Fuck that. Like, that's what I got to say about that. Anyways, Opti, what's your take? And then we'll move on to Madex.
Yeah. So, I mean, on the surface, of course, you know, my knee jerk reaction is kind of basically what everyone else was saying. It's just like, this seemed like a libertarian LARP from Javier Milei. There has been a lot of rumors, you know, about him meeting certain people and all this stuff. And we've been seeing kind of writing on the wall. Maybe he's not fully embracing Bitcoin, even though he's talking a big game. And it kind of just all boils down to like, we can't really trust these politicians after all. But it was interesting that he was able to capture the zeitgeist with basically the conversations that we always talk about here, which kind of goes into maybe like conspiracy theory, quote unquote lane, where you're seeing the powers that be kind of shift their rhetoric to be a little more freedom minded so that they can capture the masses. And maybe this is what we're seeing right now. And we've been mentioning for a while the differences between Argentina and El Salvador. You know, El Salvador is basically, you know, a tiny country. I forget where Argentina is on like the size of their country, but they're a pretty reputable economy out there. Like they have a lot of economic weight out there. And Argentina was wrapped up in so many like IMF loans and dollar debt and et cetera and all that stuff. So of course these situations are different from Argentina and El Salvador. But again, on the surface, it is a little bit of a letdown, but hence us Bitcoiners, we always say like, you slay your heroes and all that stuff. But I really like Nolan's Count BTC, the breakups take on this idea where he says, you know, basically, Javier Milei just slashed 70,000 government jobs, and they will not be able to enforce these regulations. And he's basically getting free money from the IMF. Now, I know that's kind of like a hopeful take, and maybe it's not necessarily what's going on, but I really like that take that, like, look, maybe this is what he's writing down on paper, but there's no way they're going to actually be able to enforce this, considering that there's not going to be enough government employees to even check up on this. And maybe he's just getting a free IMF loan. Obviously, nothing's free when it comes from the IMF or the FATFA. But I do kind of like that take that I heard this morning from Nolan. Go watch the breakup. Absolutely love it. But I think at this point, only time will tell. But it does seem like this is a mistake from Javier Milei, you know, nod to what Kaiser was saying. But again, I think only time will tell, and we'll see how this plays out in real time. But yeah, he's not looking as good as that Nayib Bukele looks right now, considering that Nayib just like stood on game and stood on business and was like, nah, you guys are not getting any loans here. I'm not taking any money from you guys. Like, basically, like, go fuck yourself. So, hey, it looks like he definitely has a blemish on his record, but we'll see how this plays out. I really like how Nolan framed this. Maybe, you know, slashing 70,000 government workers basically means that there'll be no way for them to enforce this, and we'll see how this plays out, I guess. Only time will tell.
Only time will tell. Anyways, I do want to interject here, and I want to give a shout out to BTC Believer for the $5 to help Nico cover that expensive and ass view. It's
probably a typo. Expensive
ass view. It's actually like, no, El Salvador is pretty economical. I highly suggest you guys coming down here. It's not as expensive as you guys would think. Anyways, Madex, what's your take on all this, man? As one of the most hardcore Bitcoin artists out there.
Well, as a wise man once said, believing that the politician cares about you is like believing that the stripper actually likes you. So whatever they say is just noise. Even for that, you want to have a little bit of hope. But at the end of it, that the fiat system is just way too powerful. And obviously he's under pressure from somewhere or something. If it's true, that he is the kind of person that he led the people to believe, there's pressure somewhere. The whole, not only are there the tempting fiat gains, but then there's the well-established system of blackmailing that exists. And, who knows where these guys get caught up. But as soon as you step in to play that political game, I don't think it matters how pure you are. It's like diving into a mud-filled pond, like just a puddle of mud. You can be the cleanest, most honest, above board, well-meaning person, and as soon as you enter politics, you're just instantly tainted. So I'm not surprised at all from any of the actions from the state, any of the actions from the whole thing is just a circus around keeping the Federal Reserve's business and activities private. So they'll keep us distracted in whatever ways they can come up with. They'll say whatever, and just none of it's true. It's all just fake. And I don't think there's any hope for any politically elected person in a traditional like fiat system or a democracy to do anything that's actually good for free markets. Once you're in the club, you're in the club. And if you enable free markets and you enable sovereign individuals, what happens is at some point, sooner or later, your palace is going to get stormed. And that's just kind of the reality of opening things up and kind of letting loose that kind of iron control. And I don't expect, like, I'm never surprised when this stuff happens. I'm never surprised when like the stripper never texts me back. So
oh man.
Let's go.
No, I mean, bro, the analogies were hot fire. Also, shout out to the super chat by Fountain Head Forum. The forum has 40 shows about Malay since August. I have talked to people who know Malay for 10 to 20 years. This is a major disappointment. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, look, the facts are there. I hope I laid it out for you guys in a way that you guys could understand. Look, these rules, they don't really are effective in stopping money laundering. They definitely are very effective at increasing compliance costs for sure. And they're definitely effective at excluding portions of the population because they're deemed too risky and it's not profitable to onboard them because of the compliance costs that would come with it. So yeah, I mean, look, this is one of the things that Bitcoin fixes. And Javier Milei for being a libertarian anarcho-capitalist, chainsawing a central bank. I gotta say, this is quite a disappointment. But I like your take, Opti, on Nolan in the breakup show, where like, look, he did fire 70,000. Was it 70,000?
Yeah, 70,000.
That's a lot. 70,000 government employees. So I don't know how they're gonna kind of enforce that and this and that. Maybe there's some 4D chess being played, but I don't like this. Anytime you hear stuff about Bitcoiners being registered, like I just like, no, like that's just like, look, what the world hasn't come to realize yet, and I think Madex was saying this so eloquently, is like, look, the world isn't going to burn down if these large bureaucratic institutions go away tomorrow. I would say the world would work better. Capitalism would work better. The free market would work better, right? But they have to, like, in a way, seem as if they're providing some type of value. And this is what the FATFA thing kind of reminds me of, is like, look, guys, we are compliant, like we're enforcing compliance worldwide. We're making sure that none of these things happen. So yeah, But anyways, Bitcoin fixes this.
The entire purpose of money is to not know your client. That's the entire purpose of money. That's why it exists. So you don't have to know your client.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Exactly. Yeah. Look, anonymity, if like what, like again, like the whole idea of that being demonized, the whole idea of that, like that psyop of anonymity is illegal, like anonymity should not be allowed, is something that, people should get up and say, like, why is that? Like, why do you need to know my identity for, a $5 transaction? And I always bring it back to when the Bank Secrecy Act was established in 1970. the rate was $10,000 US dollars. If you adjust that for inflation, that's 80,000 US dollars in purchasing power today. That number never changed from the 1970 number. And in the Inflation Reduction Act, they never got this into law, but they were basically trying to make the argument of every $600 transaction was going to be surveilled as well. So this idea that, you know, the world would burn down if the government isn't surveilling every single transaction, I think is something that us Bitcoiners have to question that very idea. And then more importantly, question the results. Like, what are the results? What are the consequences? Not what did I want to happen, right? What did I believe was going to happen? More so what actually happened, right? And in the case of these compliance and AML requirements, they weren't effective at stopping crime. And you heard it from the head of FinCEN himself, literally saying, like, word for word, yeah, it seems like terrorists still prefer the traditional financial system, which is heavily regulated, right? Anyways, guys, let's get to the culture segment where we talk about Madex and all his projects. But first, I do want to give some very special shout outs to our sponsors. So first, I'm going to start up with the Orange Pill app. Guys, it's very, very important to stack friends who stack sats. The Orange Pill app is the Bitcoin social layer. Guys, if you ever go to a new city and you want to interact with Bitcoiners, you just don't know where they are. If you're anything like me, where, you know, once you switch to a Bitcoin standard, you have a hard time kind of interacting, and, you know, kind of you're not really on the same wavelength as no coiners, the Orange Pill app is for you. You download it. They have a filtration system where you'll only find Bitcoiners in there. You won't get random anonymous messages saying, if you send me one Bitcoin, if you send me one Bitcoin, I'll send you two. So the filter system is great, and it's a great tool to connect with Bitcoiners close to you. It's also the #1 resource for creating Bitcoin only events in a city. If you're thinking about creating a Bitcoin meetup, the Orange Pill app is for you. You can create it, you can promote it on the Orange Pill app. So guys, download the Orange Pill app today. The Simply Bitcoin group chat is live. It's one of the best ways to reach me and Opti. So go check out the Orange Pill app. All right, everybody, let's get to the culture.
The Daily Culture.
All right, everybody. I also want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Kaboom Racks. They are the most trusted place to buy, sell, and host mining equipment. This is where I personally buy my Bitcoin mining ASICs. Check out their racks. You can do that by scanning the QR code or checking the link in the video description, and that will take you directly to their Telegram marketplace where you can connect with a member of their sales team. They make purchasing their products easy and transparent. You could also sell your mining equipment with them, access their vast network of domestic and international customers when you sell your mining equipment with Kaboom Racks. What are you waiting for? Start your mining journey today. Visit Kaboom Racks. All right, Opti, it's all yours.
All right, let's go. All right, so the conversation we all been waiting for, the one with the legendary Madex. So look, we say this all the time on the show, and we try to iterate this as much as possible and bring as many cool people like yourself on the show. But it's the idea that politics is downstream from culture. And the way to really win this Bitcoin adoption race that we find ourselves in, this Bitcoin movement, revolution, however you want to name it, is by taking over the culture. And I think you're a great example of this. Not only a great artist, but you just have that ethos in everything that you do. And that's why, in my opinion, you're one of the GOAT Bitcoin artists out there. So maybe just start there, Madex. Why did you choose being a Bitcoin artist? And also add on top of that, the power of basically memetics out here and being an artist that instills his principles in everything that he does.
Well, art, I believe, is a sort of pursuit for meaning in the first place. And Bitcoin is a excellent anchor once you grasp it into to something that really does have meaning and does make a difference. There's the art is exists to see behind the veil and kind of look past what we have, and finding a purpose and finding a reason and finding a meaning to communicate what could be that is as rich as Bitcoin is. I think what was the greatest possible thing that could have happened. And it made kind of my passion for visual communication have a bigger message and a bigger push. And I mean, like, a lot of the reason that it's Bitcoin art, but it's more individual and freedom principled, which obviously Bitcoin is a huge part of it. But the idea that my creations can send signal to people out there who are freedom minded, for them to understand they're not alone, and be encouragement to kind of keep going and keep looking for a network to connect with, or keep working on whatever it is that you think will help to provide freedom for future generations. But then also just knowing that that there's sort of a big monster out there right now for us. We do have like an actual super demon that we all have to fight, and most of us are asleep to it, and some of us are waking up to that battle, and encouraging people to stand up and kind of find a way to fight. I think there couldn't be any greater meaning, I think, behind art in terms of what the change represents once we get onto a hard money standard. So that keeps me very motivated, and also is a thing that with a lot of other Bitcoin art I see, I think that artists coming into the space, or they're really focused on the Bitcoin and not really like the principles or the ideals around it. And that's kind of what I try to really push with MadeX. Is it's very, very, very rare to find the actual Bitcoin logo or iconography in or any of the really well recognized symbols in any of the work, and that's because Bitcoin is just a tool that enables sovereignty, but it's not in itself everything. I like to say, like, when you use a cold card for the first time, you buy a cold card, it gets there, you set it up. You're so excited. You go through this whole highly complex process to transfer money to somebody, and then it's done, and the money was sent. And then it's kind of like there's all this build and lead up to, like, oh, I did like a basic human task that is like a foundational need to like functioning civilization. And just the fact that that's so difficult today, I think, really reflects on a lot of how screwed up fiat has kind of made everything, that we cannot simply do business between our fellow man privately or without interference. And so I think most artists are kind of, the reason that we create visually and the reason we create with our hands is because it's really difficult for us to say how we feel or communicate it's very psychedelic, no matter kind of what kind of art it is. And this gives a solid foundation for kind of like, hey, a lot of these root problems are solvable, and there's kind of one quick fix.
Love it. And also, like, adding to it, and then you can chime in, Nico. I just kind of comment on something. One of the things that I really loved and noticed about like Bitcoin art, like yourself, or rather someone said Bitcoiner art, is like the power of propaganda. It's like all of this is just propaganda and making some really cool visual pieces that I guess push the memes forward, and more people get involved in what's going on and capturing their attention, and just pasting this stuff everywhere is so important, is to spread the memes out there through whatever medium you have possible. Anyways, Nico, chime in.
Yeah, so we had a question on Rumble from one of our audience members, and they said, where is it?
Is that oil on board?
Yeah, Matex. Is that oil on board?
I guess like oil paintings. Is this oil based?
Yeah, like so.
assuming
The totems are laser cut and then hand painted with acrylic, oil, and a whole kind of mix of different paint pen formulas. And that's the birch boards. And then the other, I mean, like the entire project is very mixed media. So like the basis of it started with like magazine cutouts and kind of piecing things together in sort of creative and tricky ways. And then it's kind of evolved. And then, so a lot of people think these are steel, but they're all birch boards. And I have steel editions that are in the works right now that'll be coming pretty soon, which are actually like heavy engraved. And so there'll be steel editions of kind of all the birch boards that have been made, as well as ones that will be kind of exclusively made in steel.
So I noticed also that you have an open dime on the back of some of your pieces. Could you explain what that is?
So when the whole NFT stuff started coming out, their entire foundation, like their basis on why the fucking token had value was they say, the artist digitally signed it. It's a digital signature. And at the time that all this was happening, I was like, well, that's fucking dumb. It's a JPEG file. And you can also, if what you're saying is a digital signature has value, you can do that on Bitcoin as it is now. And this is before Taproot and all that horror that happened. But so what I did was I mined a vanity address in Bitcoin. So I have a Bitcoin deposit address that is my name, 1MVDEX. At the time, it was a V. And I use that address to send Bitcoin to an open dime. And then I attach that open dime, a small amount of Bitcoin to an open dime. And then I attach that open dime to the back of the art piece. So similar to, if anyone's been around long enough or heard of Cassacious coins, each one of the Matex totem pieces is funded with a small amount of Bitcoin that comes from my vanity address. And that was a really, really smooth process until the fees started completely exploding. And then there was a period of time there where it became uneconomical to be able to do that. And I had to figure out a different way. So I've got a long list of addresses that have to be funded now. But now that fees have kind of chilled out again, we're going to be able to keep doing it for a while. But it's something that's definitely going to end, at least for small amounts of Bitcoin. The only way you'll be able to get a deposit on the open dime from the Matex vanity address is if there's a large amount, if the fee markets continue to kind of be crazy for long periods of time. So yeah, and then also I was the first artist to name. I have a huge problem with titling and naming pieces. So I just started using inspired by Jackson Pollock's naming format, where he would just do the year and then the number of the piece. So he would do like 1950, whatever, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. I just started naming all the pieces by the block time. So when the Bitcoin from the vanity address confirms in the block on the back of one of the totems, that'll be the block number of the piece, or it's the block number at the time that I declare that the piece is completed and it's finished. So right there's 801,591, which was that was the block we were at when I signed and finished the piece.
Dope.
Beautiful.
All right, so Matex, just to be clear here, these are physical NFTs.
No, they're the idea being that they're physical pieces of artwork, and then they all have Bitcoin wallets that I have the records of and the ability to fund at any time. So I
love it. Yeah, I'm just trolling you, bro.
So I can do a lot of fun, kind of cool stuff with that. And the one of the like thought what I set a goal for myself that, okay, there's going to be, let's say, 1 million sats or 100,000 sats attached to this piece of artwork. And in order to get those sats, you have to, rip off the seals and you have to pull out the chip, and then you have to sweep the funds. For a time there, I was managing a site that like that watched all the addresses and would let you know if it was still funded or not, then I should get that back up and running now. During the bear market, it just kind of took it down, but also kind of like nobody really cared about. I thought it was like the coolest thing in the world, and it didn't really get a lot of traction in terms of the monitoring site, and there was a gallery attached to it and all that. But yeah, so.
Love it. Okay, we do have one question. I lost in the chat, but they were mentioning the fact that everything is priced in fiat and not Bitcoin. Why'd you choose it like that?
Yeah, it's priced in. Well, a lot of people don't want to spend Bitcoin, so that was a huge reason. The original store was only in Bitcoin, and you could only pay with Bitcoin. And then kind of over the years, well, during that time period, I got constant requests for credit card payments from Bitcoiners, but they just didn't want to send Bitcoin. They wanted to, hodl their Bitcoin, and they wanted to just use their credit card or, debit cards or whatever. So that's the way it's set up. And then just because I'm running like a shop platform, and of course, like none of these systems are really designed for Bitcoin yet. And I just haven't built a new website yet. MadeX just hasn't kind of reached that level where I really think it's necessary to. Eventually, like on the roadmap, it is to only and exclusively sell for Bitcoin. So no matter who you are in the world, if you want to buy a MadeX, you'll have to first figure out how to get Bitcoins. But it's hard enough as it is to run an art business, and I'm just not trying to make it difficult. Like if somebody wants to buy a piece of Bitcoin artwork and they want to support MadeX, I want to make it as easy as possible. So Bitcoin or fiat.
Love it. Love it. All right, bro. Well, hey, absolutely love you, bro. I love the stuff that you're working on. I know Nico's a huge fan. He's telling me that you're making him broke with all the art he buys.
Yeah, I love Bitcoin art, man. That's one of the things I splurge on. So I love to support all the Bitcoin artists like Crypto Graffiti, Lucio Paletti, MadeX. I think I have 3 MadeXs. And I just splunge on Bitcoin art, and I'm forgetting Bitcoin artists off the top of my head, but I love, I have a Brecky as well. So yeah, I love Bitcoin art, and I love to just kind of support the community. And Bitcoin's given me everything. It's giving me a career. It's giving me hope for the future. It's giving me savings, right? So I'd like to support the Bitcoin community by making Bitcoin content, highlighting Bitcoin artists like yourself, and putting money where my mouth is, and actually purchasing some of your guys' pieces. So big fan, MadeX, and looking forward to being able to hang out with you at the Bitcoin Rodeo in Calgary in July. That should be awesome. But if you have any last words for the audience, what would it be?
Well, definitely come to Alberta for the Bitcoin Rodeo. We've got pretty good lineup, and it's going to be a pretty interesting crowd because the way we've stacked it, we're going to have a lot of people who are probably getting into Bitcoin for the first time, or have never even heard of Bitcoin, or don't even care about Bitcoin. So we need as many Bitcoiners there as we can to kind of spread the pitches. And yeah, we're going to showcase Alberta. I know Canada has a horrible rap, and that it's on the East Coast and in Vancouver and all these other kind of places in Canada, it's been really, really bad. But Alberta is sort of the Texas sort of freedom state of Canada. And we have the best beef in the world, and we have Rocky Mountains, and we have kind of all the wonderful mountain activities, and we want to share that sort of with the world, and also primarily inspire Canadians to get out of wherever they are in Canada and come to Alberta. If you're not willing to like make a hop internationally or deal with that whole journey, it's at least much, much better in Alberta than it is in anywhere else in Canada. And also we have a separatist movement that's sort of growing here, and we have a lot of, if you're going to run into freedom and like-minded people in as far as Bitcoin goes, Alberta is the primary place for that to happen. So if you're not in Canada, we don't really recommend you moving here, but if you are in Canada, definitely come to Alberta. It's the best part of Canada right now in terms of everything that we as Bitcoiners care about. And yeah, that's about it. Check out the art. Bull Bitcoin's going international right now, so you'll see us kind of popping up in some other countries. And yeah, you can get merchandising from Bull right now on the website. And I also wanted to just shout out Time Chain Calendar, because it's really, really awesome, and I use it a lot in sort of kind of finding block times for my previous pieces and whatnot. So if you guys haven't seen that, it's an awesome project run by this guy TC. And yeah, overall, I'm very bullish on Bitcoin, and I am very I'm not going to be surprised by all of the obstacles we face along the way. I think that there's just a huge group of people, even within Bitcoin, that thinks that just refuses to let go of the idea that the government cares about you and that it has your best interest at heart. Its only goal is to just suck and steal wealth from us and to destroy our lives. And it's a smash and grab right now with the way things are going. So really got to let go of thinking that the political systems are going to help you in any way, and take total control at every part of your life, like control over your food supplies, especially. You want to have good defense network abilities. You want to know people that have the ability to defend themselves or learn to defend yourself. And every other sort of institution that the government has crept into and taken over, you want to make sure you have control of that for yourself moving forward. And, hopefully Bitcoin wins. I feel like it inevitably will, but it's definitely not going to be easy. These guys have had power for a very, very long time, and they're not just going to let it go at all. So I know Bitcoin is like a lot of fun, and we're all having a lot of fun, but there is a very, very, very serious apex coming at some point, and everybody's just got to be prepared for that. The fun in Bitcoin, like at the end of all of this, like we're talking about fucking money here, and we're talking about a lot of money, and we're talking about fucking with the government's money. So just be prepared.
Yeah, 100%. This is a game. This is a game of power, and that's like a realization that all Bitcoiners come to eventually. And we're fighting a Leviathan that has been well entrenched for hundreds of years, and all of a sudden, this magic internet money just came along, and they're just not going to just hand over the keys and go gently into that good night, right? And that's something that we have to keep in mind, which is exactly why we cover, the news that we cover, and we're on top of the CBDCs and what the other side is doing. You got to arm yourselves with the facts, the truth. This is information narrative trench warfare. It's about winning over the hearts and minds of individuals. This is the separation of money and state, after all, the peaceful revolution. But only if you take self-custody.
Hey, Nico, I wanna chime in here for a second and just get a call of action out there, guys. Guys, go support Madex. Go buy an art piece. If his art piece is out of your budget right now, support him and buy some merch. He does great stuff, guys. Go to his website right now and support him.
100%. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. We appreciate you all. I want to give a very special shout out to our guest, Madex. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We appreciate you. Guys, go to madex.art. You can go follow him on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, @SpaceBull. You guys could find his art. I'm a personally huge fan of his art, and huge fan of the individual as well. Madex, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nico. Cheers.
Appreciate it. All right, guys, that was our show. It's first Simply Bitcoin live show from the shining country on a hill, El Salvador. So far, I've had amazing experiences. We're going to be doing the second live show from El Salvador tomorrow. I'll still have the volcano view, and I think we'll be doing a show from the beach on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So it should be a whole lot of fun. Lots of logistics for Opti and I, but should be a whole lot of fun. So love you all. Thank you guys so much. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value, and we'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. One more view of the volcano. Let me see if I can get it. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Where is it? There it is. Perfect. All right. Peace out, everybody.
Episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.